You're very welcome. So, speaking of love, for those of you that may be joining us after we've began our service this morning, um, today I continue our series on conversations with Dr. Keith, and there could not be a greater lead-in of the song of "How Deep Is Your Love," because the love that I have for this beloved individual of mine is deeper than the deepest seas. And she is not only a dear friend, but she's been a mentor of mine for many years, and is just really a piece of my soul. So I'd like to invite to the screen the one, the only Dr. Maureen Hoyt to the screen, who is a legend in the science of mind movement and has so many credits to her list of credentials. But at the end of the day, the credentials mean nothing. What matters is this is a woman of great wisdom, of great depth, of great love, of great joy, and is just a powerhouse and a gift to the world. So thank you for being here, my dear friend, Dr. Maureen Hoyt.
You're welcome, Dr. Keith. That sounds a little like a eulogy.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. We are recording this service, so if we need to use it that way later, we could.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Not
So,
too soon later,
yeah,
okay?
let's not plan on doing it anytime soon. So, Dr. Maureen, I know you've watched a couple of these that I've done of conversations with me, and the purpose is that just that you and I can carry on a conversation stimulated by some quotes or whatever may be speaking to us in the moment, to give the our community and those that are viewing us at a later date on YouTube and currently on Facebook just a different insight into the science of mind, into new thought, into your and my approach to life and the teachings of metaphysics and just life itself. Our theme this month is gratitude, a way of life. And so I'm going to give you our first quote and let you begin to share with us what that means to you. Okay?
Sure.
So it's from the great 13th century poet Rumi, and it's this: if you only say one prayer in a day, make it thank you.
Well, I think in the end, that quote is used so liberally. And yet, that's something that we forget to do periodically. We forget to say thank you for whatever transpired in any given day is an opportunity for our growth, whether it's something that feels like a tragedy or something that feels like joy and celebration. To thank all parts of who we are as we're wandering through this life and, trying to release and let go of things that no longer serve us, we make room for the things in our lives that do serve us. And I think that really that's what gratitude is all about. Is to we can't think more than one thought at a time, so why not make it a gratitude thought instead of remembering something terrible from our past? So that's kind of where I come from. I say thank you a lot. Having raised two children, and granddaughter, she has learned manners by way of gave me something as a little person. I said thank you, and she learned to say you're welcome. So we create an energy that's reciprocal. Thank you, you're welcome.
Right.
So there you go.
So you say that you have two children and a grandchild that you raised, but you have countless number of spiritual offspring.
I
And
do.
so you do. So it is important. And yes, you do say thank you a lot. One of the things that you taught me to do a long time ago was when we would walk into a coffee bar or sit down at a restaurant, the first thing that you do when the greeter or waiter comes up to you is to introduce yourself and have them introduce themselves back to us. And that's, I think, the same energy as saying thank you, which is shining your light, right? And it's really the act of namaste. It's letting the light, the divine, the God within me honor and acknowledge the light and the divine within you. And
Yeah.
so I believe that that's what Rumi is telling us there, is to do that. Feedback to do that, and to just as you're saying, be the initiator of the experience that we desire to have. And so it's certainly, yes, in the context of the thought of thank you, but it's more than that, or it goes deeper than that, in that thank you is much like forgiveness, in that it's a transformative energy and quality. It transforms not only our thoughts and our beliefs, but because we live in a universe that's governed by spiritual law, then automatically we shift the energy field that we are. And as we put that out, it must return to us in a ripple effect.
Yeah, yeah. The idea of forgiveness is pivotal in our lives as we spiritually evolve, because forgiveness represents something that happened in the past. And in order for us to turn the page to see the next chapter of our lives, forgiveness has to be part and parcel of letting go of what happened in the past. And we can't, somebody said one time that we can't change the past, but we can start from today and create a new ending. And I think gratitude has a lot to do with creating a new ending. Years ago, I think it was in the late 80s, I came upon a book by a woman named Sarah Brana. I used to say breathnatch all the time until I realized it was a Welsh name, and the pronunciation was in her second book. But it was called Simple Abundance. Was having a gratitude list for every day, being aware of the things in life that gave us joy, and the things that gave us pause. And the pause things are the ones that we most have to work on. The gratitude stuff is kind of easy peasy when you think about it, but it's the ones that cause us difficulty, because every single person, situation, place, thing that shows up for us is someone's trying to coach me. And I have to be able to hear what that coach is saying to me. So being in gratitude is an amazing part of that experience.
Well, you're right. And, as the theme is gratitude as a way of life, gratitude, what just sparked for me as you said that was to be in gratitude means to be in the energy of receiving, and or the feminine energy, right? Which is then bringing that into my vessel that is ready to be fertile to create that which is new, right?
Yes, you
And
just
so,
defined the subconscious mind.
oh, I did. I'm glad we have that. I'm glad we've had that recorded.
Yes.
So, the thing is that so not only are we setting up this field of energy, this field of consciousness, we're also playing the masculine role. We're choosing the seed that we're planting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in what it really does is by connecting to our masculine and feminine energies, we're doing, as our beloved David Alt says, we're engaging in that dance of the beloved, or dance with the beloved, in the creative field of the very thing that we desire to experience. And for us to do that, we have to do some fundamental things first. One is be willing to receive, be willing to plant the seed, be willing to tend to our beliefs, and be willing to live in faith, that time of suspension between the planting of the seed and the manifestation.
Yeah. Yeah. Ernest Holmes says, and this is gender specific, but he says, man is the power. And for this power to work, we have to be the avenue through which this power demonstrates itself. And so if I am in gratitude, what an amazing power that creates for us. We move through life from gratitude power.
Right.
And that changes the perspective on so many things. And especially right now when things, keep saying things, but when our world situation is the way it is, we have a tendency to look at the downside, if you will. But even those people in our lives or that sort of come into our circle of influence that create havoc or create misery, it's only temporary. Not our reality, because that person came into my life to teach me something or to show me something. I often say that language was not created because you need to know what I'm feeling or thinking. Language was created because I need to know what I have to say,
Right.
to hear what it is that I'm saying. Would you not agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And language is just one tool of communication. As you said, when the individual that you're referencing came into life to teach us something, I don't know that I agree. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I certainly think they came into our life to present us with an opportunity to be aware of how we want to respond to that. And so certainly sometimes my response to that, and I teach this, sometimes we don't even have to respond in the language audibly. We can respond in two other languages. We can respond into a love language, namaste, homie, I'm out of here. And then the other language is body language and turn around and walk away. So there's other languages. But what that I'm going to let that lead us to the next quote, because I think that for one to be confident enough to use their language in a way to propagate their own conscious evolution, they have to know who they are so that you're responding and not reacting, right? So the next quote I have for us is a Louise Hay quote. I used it earlier this morning already, and I would like for you to speak to what it means to us. It's this: remember, in the vast infinity of life, all is perfect, whole, and complete. And so are you. And those words, perfect, whole, and complete, are used so often in this teaching. Share with us what that quote means to you, please.
Well, when I first came to the teaching first I came in 1974.
Uh-huh.
I left because we moved out to the Canal Valley, and I didn't come back to the teaching until 1981. But I went to the Woodland Hills, or the Canoga Park's Church of Religious Science, with Dr. Barnum at that time. I remember him saying one Sunday, as he was doing the opening treatment, that we are perfect, whole, and complete. And of course, my immediate response was to reject that. Could I be perfect, whole, and complete when I feel so flawed? I learned to say, rather than I am flawed, I feel flawed, because
Very good.
I am flawed as a lifetime experience. I feel flawed has a beginning and an end. I remember thinking, whole, perfect, and complete, how can that be? But I realized that if I'm not aware of who I am intrinsically, that's the whole, perfect, and complete. Who I am at the core of who I am, and I can't ever demonstrate any possibility of that in the relative world. I have to be able to know that for myself. And, probably for the first year that I went to that center, I cried through every service because what I was learning from him, and you've heard this quote, if you've listened to me talk before, you've heard the quote where that first Sunday that I went to Canoga Park, Dr. Barnum said, "You may not believe everything you hear today, but you may hear something that you already believe." That's what kept me coming back. And he was the most wonderful teacher. I took classes with him to start with. And then when the Thousand Oaks Church opened up, and Reverend Barbara and David Lawfrey came, there was a younger element, and it was more convenient because it was right in my backyard. But when I realized there's there are aspects to being whole, perfect, and complete that show up in the relative world more frequently than they did in 1981. You know, as we grow in consciousness, we have a greater acceptance of the possibility of feeling that way more often than we don't feel that way. And that's I think a thing that we all get to work on, that we're works in progress.
I agree with you, and I think that's well put. That as we evolve, right, then it appears that the appearance of our divine nature, that wholeness, that perfection, that completeness, shows up more readily. But it's only showing up more readily because it is reflecting who we know ourselves to be. You know, in the work of David Hawkins, as he speaks of us evolving up the spiral nature
Yeah.
in conscious evolution, it's moving in consciousness from a place of fear, doubt, lack, insecurity, living in a place of force as opposed to power. But then as we align ourselves with our divine nature and move up that spiral, then we begin to know that we are the divine. We are the I am that I am. We are the consciousness inherently or intrinsically, as you said, of the Christ, right? So, and then it's letting that be the foundation from how we approach life. And it doesn't mean that there aren't times on the journey that we forget or that we respond or react differently. But much like having, as Marianne Williamson calls it, spiritual, she said, as we talk about having physical musculature, we have spiritual musculature. And so when I hear these words today of perfect, whole, and complete, I look at that as if that is speaking of the essence of who I am, my soul, right? That very thing that gives my being life itself. You know, at the physical level, there have been times on my journey I've been perfect, right? But there are times I haven't been. But at the end of the day, as I, the individual, and all of us evolve into that greater awareness, we become less attached to the physical, right? Because we know. But
And at the level of spirit, it has a different connotation than it does in the human experience.
correct.
The idea of perfection in the human experience is always measured by somebody else's idea of what perfect represents.
Right.
That's an unattainable thing as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Because it's fleeting.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Because if I know Maureen is the perfect Maureen, otherwise I'd be some or something else, right?
Right.
Keith is the perfect Keith. No matter, it doesn't, it's not there's no contingencies. It's not how I look. It's not how much money I have. It's not who I know. I am the perfect demonstration of God in action as Maureen. You are the perfect demonstration of God in action as Keith.
Right.
There's a certain level of gratitude when you get to that place where you can say, wow, I don't have to measure up to somebody else. I don't have to measure up to something else. I can just be me. And I remember that sappy song that Alliance used to sing called I Love Myself the Way I Am.
I don't know.
Nothing I need to change. I'll always be the perfect me. Nothing to rearrange. That's part of the lyric at the beginning of the song. The kids used to sing it at teen camp
Yeah.
years ago. So here's what I know. That when I'm in gratitude, the lows get higher, of shorter duration, and less frequency.
Cool.
I've set something up, right?
Yeah.
I've set something up.
Good. All right. So here's our next quote. And it's an Ernie quote. So it's here and now we are surrounded by and immersed in an infinite good. How much of this infinite good is ours? All of it. How much of it may we have to use? As much of it as we can embody.
Yes. You want me to go first? I'm happy to do that.
Sure.
If I don't know, the Aramaic word Gamzo, loosely translated, means everything happens for good.
Can you
So
say that again, please?
there's an Aramaic word, gomzo, Gomzo, and I got this from Carlton Whitehead years and years ago.
Uh-huh.
Lamar. The word loosely translated means everything happens for good. But we can only see that in retrospect, okay? So if I can't embody and take ownership and responsibility for everything that goes on in my life, because we're as humans, we are demonstrating the pairs of opposites constantly. We don't just breathe in, we breathe out. We don't just go to sleep, we wake up. Although sometimes sleep could mean the metaphysical version of, being asleep. And we all do that temporarily. But embodying our good means that I have to take ownership of that. I have to watch how it's not about me. Isn't that an amazing thing? It's unbelievable that I demonstrated this just by saying that. I'm saying that I have no personal responsibility in this, but to say, wow, look at what I demonstrated. Look at the good that I'm.
Maureen, we lost you there for a second. We lost you. So we're going to have to.
I'm receptive. I'm receptive. I'm receptive. So I think for me, it has to be a daily occurrence. And that daily occurrence where I give power to the source, the divine source, and that I'm in that ocean of consciousness of good on a daily basis. It is as close to my recognition of it. But I have to be able to articulate that in some way, shape, or form. It just isn't like Ernest Holmes would say. It just doesn't come to us willy-nilly. It comes through concerted effort and a shift in consciousness.
Right. Right. So you're speaking of, you went out there for a little moment, your audio went blank, but yeah. But the it you're speaking of is good. And for those of you that may be new to this philosophy, and I'll remind those of you who've been around that when we speak of good in this teaching, it's G with an uppercase G. And so good is a synonym for God, God also being another word for the higher power, the universal I am, the thing itself, spirit, the absolute, the unchangeable one. And so for me, when this quote tells us that we're immersed in this infinite good, it reminds me that I, Keith Cox, and for those of our listeners and viewers, that when we speak about ourselves, we're speaking about I in the sense of what we all have as far as capacity and opportunity and possibility on our spiritual awakening, is that I show up in this world of effect, life itself, right? Imbued with the essence of the thing itself. So I individualize the God, the higher power, and good is an expression of that thing itself. And so, how much of it can I experience and express? Well, as much as I can believe of it as mine. Right?
Yes.
It's how can I use it in a way so that my outer life reflects not just my inner life, but my inherent inner life. Right? So every Sunday I speak of this often and during classes, that to remember that the qualities of this power that in our teaching we state are inherent within us are not limited to these, but include peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and we've added wisdom to that. And so already inherent within me, the individualized expression of the thing itself are those, right? And so if I choose to express those, choose to think accordingly, believe accordingly, and act accordingly, then as I embody that, because we live in a universe that is governed by spiritual law, our experiences will reflect that. And then as we experience those experiences, we have the opportunity to let what previously had been the ceiling of our belief become now the floor and the foundation for our growth. And so that sets us up to then play in that rhythm of the creation of life. So the next quote, which I can't help but share today, Maureen, because it reminds me so much of you, is from Paul Boynton. Begin with Yes is the book it's from. And he writes, as we step into the unknown, because that's really what this journey is all about, we discover we can be fragile and strong and terrified and brave all at the same time.
Yes. So, so, there's an interesting time right now. So much of the time, people who feel as though they need to control everything mistake kindness for weakness. And that's especially difficult, I think, for men. Fact of the matter is that kindness is the road to self-discovery. And, if I, as a student of the science of mind, because I'm still a student, science of mind, I'm learning new things every day. If I cannot embrace the highs and lows of the human experience, the emotional highs and lows, just as an aside, I just want to share that about a year ago, I was in such a state of a crisis of faith, let's put it that way, a crisis of confidence in what was going on in the country. And my children did an intervention. They came over and said, Mom, we need to talk to you. And I said, I couldn't imagine what it was, but I got that feeling in the pit of my stomach that this can't be good, right? That was usually me going to them and saying, Heather, Nathan, I need to talk to you. Anyway, what it was that they had noticed, not just in person, but on some of the postings on Facebook, that I appeared to be getting angrier and angrier by the minute, right? And Heather said, Mom, she said, if there were any words that I would use to describe you, angry would not be one of them. We feel like you need to stop watching the news and stop posting on Facebook. Well, it set me to thinking. And so my reaction, the difference between response and reaction was, for a couple of days, I was in a funk because how could they say that to me? Well, I went back to my timeline and I thought, oh, you're right. I am angry. I feel angry. And I had to shift that.
So, Maureen,
Equilibrium is just the most ridiculous possible thing I can imagine. That's what this whole thing taught me. That's what that quote represents to me. No matter, as Ernest Holmes says in the beginning of The Science of Mind, God is always God, no matter our emotional storm or our objective situation. So if we can maintain that, we can move through anything.
So, Maureen, you went out for a second technologically. So, right before you said equilibrium, can you just give us a quick snippet again of what you were saying about that? Because our listeners have written in and they want to hear what you're saying.
Well, nothing or no one can upset my spiritual equilibrium unless I let it.
Right.
That's the thing. Am I letting a negativity come into my life? I'm feeling negativity. So I'll just add to it because I can't remember exactly what I said because it's not written down anywhere. But one of my teachers, Maureen Hoyt, said, when there's incoherence, in my life. It means I'm disconnected. I feel disconnected from my God presence. There are 3 stages of incoherence: frustration, resignation, and cynicism. Now, you don't ever want to get to cynicism, but when we begin to notice frustration in our lives, that means we have some work to do. You know, we have to sit down. You know, if you're meditating for 20 minutes once a day, meditate for 20 minutes twice a day. If you have to stop, you have to stop. We have to stop the thinking we think makes it so.
Okay.
The corroborative thinking that we might have when we hear something that we agree with, and yet it's just not healthy for us to think these
Got
things.
it. So, Maureen, I'm going to stop you there because you're about to freeze again.
How do you know that?
Because I can see your face freezing.
Okay.
So, all right. So you got us there. So I'm going to read this. We're almost out of time, even though I know people would love for us to keep going. So I'm going to read this that I found that I think speaks to the word God that you keep using, and it's this: God is consciousness, not a creator. God is the source of creation itself. It, not he or she, it is not independent of you. It is the totality of everything. So when I call myself God, I'm not talking about my personal self. I'm talking about the expression of the God self that rests inside of me. The verb, the energy, not the noun. Once you think God is a noun, person, place, or thing, you separate yourself from it and immediately become a limited being. That's what separates the believers, religious, from the knowers, spiritual. So I think that's a great thing for us to remember. So, Maureen, we're going to close on this quote, and I'm going to let you tell us what it means to you, and then I'll do the same. And then I'm sure I can speak for all of us that we would love to do round 2 of this and get your internet connection stable on another day, because you and I could do this for hours on end, right?
Yep, we sure could.
So we began with a Rumi quote. We're going to end with a Rumi quote, and it's this: "My soul is from elsewhere. I'm sure of that, and I intend to end up there."
So Ernest Holmes said in something that I read several years ago that our soul incarnates over and over and over again. He never really talked about reincarnation in physical form, but talked about soul incarnations. And we could have as many as 10,000 soul incarnations in us, which is helpful when you think about someone asks you a question, something you've never studied before, and you have an immediate answer. Where did that come from? Because it's soul memory. It's where we come from at a soul memory level. Now, that was part of the metaphysical discussion, I think, that got left out of edited version of The Science of Mind. And for me, I realize that when I go to my soul, my safe place, it's the place where I am not affected by anything in the external realm. It's where I feel peace and tranquility. And it's the place that is what I need to do in those moments of incoherence. And so I think maybe that's what Rumi meant. He said that. You can give me a whole different version of what you think it means, and I'll appreciate that.
Okay. Well, first, when you tell me that Ernie tells us we have 10,000 souls in us, it explains why I now have to wear pants that have expandable waistlines. But what I think that Rumi means in this quote of "my soul is from elsewhere, I'm sure of that, and I intend to end up there," makes me think of the awareness that I have that deep within me, my soul is made up of the same cosmic dust as the rest of the universe.
Yeah.
And so it actually causes emotion in me to think of
Yeah.
um, that the elsewhere isn't a destination. The elsewhere is transcendent of creation, right? And so when we take this form of the human, which is the only form we know, right? Um, and the journey, maybe through those 10,000 souls, but I can certainly speak only to the journey of the one I'm aware of, is that it seems that a large portion of my developmental part of this journey has been to not know that that's true,
Yeah.
right? And so as I become more and more awakened to my own spiritual magnificence, everything that I can remember to do is to remember that truth,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
then, as you have so beautifully taught me over the years, that because we live in a world of and, that as I do that, I can also and learn more about the way the physical law of the universe works,
Yeah.
and I can live in forgiveness, and I can choose to grow, and I can be more loving, and I can also learn how to have a self-empowered, unemotional no, right? Like all of those things can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And to know that I'm so deeply, deeply, deeply blessed that you're in my life. So thank you.
I feel the same way. Nothing in the human experience is either or, it's both and. And when we get to realize that, Arthur Chang said one time in a thing that he wrote that you cannot know who you are as a spiritual being until you have experience.
Right,
Because what you just said, that the spiritual is transcendent. It removes us from the problem and takes us to the solution.
right,
Really about gratitude and to know that whatever that challenge is, that there is solution already in place, because the God of my understanding would never create a problem without a way to solve the problem. And as my friend, you get to know that it's a privilege to share this time and space with you today. And with all the others that are online, I've looked at who's here, and I miss seeing you in person and hugging you, but I'm giving you a virtual hug, everyone who's online today. It's a
wonderful,
wonderful thing.
wonderful. My beloved, thank you.